Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions with my co-host Stacie, here to talk about From Season 2, Episode 5, Lullaby. The episode's description reads as follows. Sarah must face the music as word of her return spreads to the town. Victor and Jade strike an unlikely bargain. The episode was directed by Jack Bender. The episode was written by John Griffin and Vivian Lee. Vivian Lee was actually responsible for 2 episodes last season, Episode 5, and the best episode of last season, Episode 7. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. 1, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you are listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please follow, and feel free to check out my YouTube channel on Corman Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to our channel. Shout out this week for Mad Dog, who shouted us out on one of the Facebook groups. I think it was in one of the threads about talking about the lost connections. And he ended up sharing our podcast, so shout out to Mike for that. And Latrice again, who had expressed a similarity between a show. Have you seen the show Severance?
I have not seen that one, no.
Okay. Well, the basic premise of that series is that there's your work life, where you have some kind of like device or something that keeps you from remembering your actual life. And so basically it almost ends up like a separate personality. Whereas when you're at work, you only remember stuff that happens at work. When you're outside in your real life, you don't remember work at all. And she speculated that perhaps something similar was going on here, which kind of fits into the Mad Dog theory about the game. Mm-hmm. Basically, they seem to remember their lives outside of what happened here, them getting stuck here, but perhaps they don't remember the moments leading up to it, which would then be them getting sucked into the game, something along those lines. Mm-hmm. And so that's it for the shoutouts this week. You don't have any big theories to share this week?
No, nothing. I think we're all caught up with all the Lost and Once Upon a Time discussions.
All right, so Stacie, your thoughts on this week's episode?
All right, so you can summarize this episode up by saying everyone tells off both Sarah and Boyd, and Victor and Jade apologize to each other a lot. Mm-hmm. That's what happened in this episode. We finally got time progression, almost a little too quickly.
Yes, that was,
I would say.
Yeah.
But a lot happened in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very surprised to find that section of the fandom who was complaining about the little progression we got in the first 4 episodes are still unhappy.
Yeah.
Actually, I saw a lot of people say it was worse with this one, which really surprises me because I didn't feel that at all. I felt like, yay, we're finally getting important conversations. Stuff is happening. We're learning things. And there's this group of people that's like, we still don't know anything. They're not telling us anything. This is filler.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah.
Well, for me, this episode kind of fell into okay-ish territory. There's some great stuff here. At the same time, there's also some scenes that kind of played a little clunky at points. So I'm probably not going to go out of my way to defend this one as much as I did the previous 2, but I still think there's plenty of great things in this episode.
There were a lot of really beautiful moments.
Oh, absolutely.
The actors, I think they all did an amazing job on
as
this
they
one.
do week in and week out.
Right, they always do a great job, but there were definitely key moments that I was like, wow, that was a great scene.
Mm-hmm. The strongest material for me was the Jade and Victor stuff.
Jade and Victor, that was beautiful. Like, Scott McCord, that scene, you know, I had tweeted this, like, he played such a believable, like, child, this grieving child stuck in this man's body who doesn't even know the name of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
Right.
Like, it was so beautiful and believable, you know, and Elizabeth Moy, I think, did an amazing job with Mrs. Liu's scene with Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I loved that. I think Simon Webster, our young Ethan, did phenomenal, you know, and doing his scenes this week.
Yeah, there were a lot of definite great performances.
Just a lot of really emotional scenes, and I think they all kicked it out of the water. Mm-hmm. Did a great job.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I do think maybe, like, it got a little cumbersome seeing, you know, every single person react to Sarah and Boyd.
Right.
So, I don't know. I always remember, they do block shooting, so you kind of got to look at it in 2-episode blocks.
This is very much like chess piece moving.
Mm-hmm.
We're moving the people into position to where we want them to be in for episode 6, which I'm hearing from everybody who had screeners that episode 6 is the episode.
Yeah, we've heard that all season, so
I'm gonna be careful. I'm not gonna go in thinking expecting the episode to blow my mind, because that's just setting yourself up for disappointment.
And this seems like a good time to mention it. There's so many people who are stuck on the fact that IMDb only updated through episode 6.
Yeah, I keep mentioning the
and
fact.
There's this, they think that means everybody is dying. So the only actors who have listed credits for the rest of the season is our 5 new bus people and Victor, who was also just added to the main cast this season. He was listed as a recurring cast member season 1, not a main cast.
Gotcha.
So the 6 people who are added to the main cast, Victor plus the bus people, were put in all 10 episodes in IMDb. That just tells me whoever updated IMDb put them in because of that contract change. But they haven't gone in and put the rest of the cast in.
Right.
And that's not atypical.
Yes, Internet Movie Database is not accurate up until the point that episodes actually air.
Right.
Until then, nothing that you see episode by episode is accurate. They typically don't have the writers and the directors write for episodes, and they don't have all the characters that are going to be in the episode listed. Yeah. Now, some of that is because of spoiler-related reasons, and other times they just don't have the information that they need.
Episode 7 will update with who's in episode 7 after it airs.
Right.
It does not mean everybody's dead. If everybody was dead, our episode descriptions would not be talking about Boyd and Jade and Tabitha and whoever else they're talking about.
I mean, that's the thing, is like, Jim and Randall are mentioned throughout the rest of the season in the episode descriptions.
And it's just, I find it hilarious that people honestly think every single person's dying in episode 6. Now, I'm sure people are going to die.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And, IMDb stopping listing there might be because there's big spoilers ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean they're all dying. It just means we haven't confirmed yet who continues.
Right.
And also in this show, once you're dead doesn't mean you're not getting a credit anymore either.
Right. I mean, if you're listed as a regular, you're usually listed as a regular for the season, regardless.
Right.
If
They'll list
dead
the whole. They'll list the regulars the whole season, and we've seen people come back in flashbacks and visions all over the place.
Father Khatri and Kenny's father, just in the last episode.
Right, and Father Khatri appeared, I think, all throughout season 1, even after he died, between flashbacks and things like that.
All right. Anything else before we get into it?
Nope. Let's go for it.
Okay. So we open the episode with Jade sleeping at Tom's bar in Tom's bed.
That was not our first scene.
That was not our first scene?
Our first scene was Randall on the bus.
Oh, yep. I screwed that up. Yes. Okay, so I skipped ahead a little bit. Our first scene was Randall waking up on the bus.
It's finally nighttime. We've been waiting for night for several episodes.
This scene kind of disappointed me a little bit because it was way too quick.
It did. It's so quick that you totally skipped over it in your notes. So this is our pre-credit stuff, right? And this is our first night after that night in the diner when the bus people had literally just gotten there. Which means this is our first night that our Colony House residents are living at Colony House, the new bus people. We didn't even get to see that.
Right.
Their first, experience sleeping there. We just got to see Randall, and he's on the bus. And you're right, it was a very quick scene. And that surprised me because, all of the promotional photos for this episode, 90% of them came from Randall on the bus.
Right. And I would figure that they would toy with him a little bit more than they did here.
Yeah.
He just yells at them and then they go away.
So what I had expected to happen with this episode based on the promo photos and the trailer was we were going to start and it was still going to be day. Because I knew we were going to have day and night. I thought it was still going to be that long, never-ending day, and then we'd end with night. But instead, we started with night and quickly passed through it, and that did seem a little weird. And I can see why people who have been eagerly waiting to see the monsters again were disappointed.
Something came out of this scene and a later scene with Ethan that it's a fan theory that I keep seeing a lot now, that the way to defeat the monsters is to not show fear of them. I don't buy this at all.
I'm not with it either. No, that definitely was a theme of this episode. Like every episode, we have these kind of recurring themes. And I think the whole idea of facing your fears is definitely the theme of the episode. But I don't think that's what's keeping the monsters at bay.
Right. Like, you know, in episode 2, we saw the new people that were coming into town shaking hands with the monsters. Right. They still died.
They were not afraid.
They were not afraid at that moment.
The reason that they give up is because there's a talisman on the bus.
Right.
There's nothing they're moving on. They're looking forward to see who isn't protected now.
I think Randall's combative attitude is kind of what kind of saves him here. Not necessarily saves him, but kind of makes it so that they go away faster, because he takes the stance of, you're not frightening me. He puffs out his chest.
So they realize they're not going to be able to trick him. So once they're like, you're not an easy target, they moved on. And they said, see you later. So like, they're going to come back to you another time, but not right now.
Don't think you're off the hook from...
They're going to waste... They know they're wasting their time right now. So we got to see a lot of monsters for the first time in a while.
We didn't see Smiley.
Smiley wasn't there. Was
that Jasmine that we saw in there, though?
I didn't see Jasmine. I saw Grandma was there. She had lines. Yes. First time she's had lines since the pilot.
Yeah.
The waitress was there. The milkman, the mechanic, and the nurse that killed Tom was there, and she had lines also. And I think that was the groom. There was a man in a tux.
Yeah. And
we've seen the bride a lot, and I think this is the first time I've seen him, anyways.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that the man in the tux is the bridegroom.
Okay. So we then cut to Jade sleeping at Tom's bar. He's taking over Tom's bar, and he's sleeping in his bed.
He's sleeping in Tom's bed, and I had a problem with this. I took that to Twitter also. It made me a little sad. Obviously, people are going to take over people's spaces, but I just felt like, Tom just died, like, today, and I feel like Jade didn't even, like, give a moment of respect, because this is Jade.
Does that surprise you at all coming from him?
No, but that's why. Just Jade, like, acknowledge the fact that you're here because this dude's dead.
Right. Well, also because, Mrs. Wu's house is a little more crowded than he appreciates.
Sure. He's been looking for somewhere where he can be alone. We last saw him, I think it was the last time we saw him, when he got to the bar, and he was talking with Bacta.
Right.
So, assumably, she went home to Colony House for the night, and he just camped out here.
Yes.
And we see him, he wakes up, takes a drink from a bottle. He's probably very drunk. And stares at that Polaroid, and looks at the man, and then has a vision of the man.
See, this kind of... Jade acting in such fear of this moment kind of made me laugh a little bit, because it's just like a non-threatening looking man smiling at him holding a book. Okay, granted... He soon shows the symbols, and they start bleeding.
The symbols start bleeding off the page, which was actually really cool looking.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, Jade, you've seen much worse stuff than this. Previously he screamed at the vision. This time he didn't scream until the vision was gone. So the vision disappeared, and then he screamed. And I take it as really, he's just so fed up with this. He's like, I'm tired of seeing shit. So it's not that
I'm done with this.
It's not that he's necessarily afraid of what he sees. It's more, he's just kind of done with the whole vision thing.
Yeah, I think he's pretty over it.
Okay. And then we have our credits. Que sera, sera.
And it's morning. So yeah, we skip through the night very quickly.
Yes.
And we only got to see 2 characters at the night, as well as a vision and some monsters.
So after the credits, Boyd is awoken by the church. At the church, he hears some knocking. He tells Sarah to go downstairs and stay out of sight. In comes Tabitha and Jim. Kenny apparently told them about what's going on.
Because remember, they're staying together, so they had lots of time to talk during the night.
Right. They aren't happy, which is not really surprising.
They want blood right now.
Boyd says that things have changed. When Jim asks, Sarah belongs in the box, and Boyd says things have changed, and Jim is basically like, how? And which is a perfectly reasonable question, by the way.
Right.
And then Boyd launches into this barely coherent speech about how, well, you guys put a tower up and this and that. Okay. I gotta say that I am on Boyd's side. I think there's a reason to keep Sarah alive.
Sure there is.
But he's doing a terrible job selling
him
it.
Nor Sarah are really explaining to anybody
right.
why she's alive.
Right. So I thought that the tack that Boyd needed to take in order to save Sarah and maintain credibility with the town, which is important, that he needed to basically sell them on why Sarah needed to stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't do that throughout the episode.
Yeah, he just says she's important.
And yeah, he goes off on the tangent. He's been kind of behaving erratically ever since the premiere of this season. He's definitely not himself. He's definitely not...
And he's losing allies very quickly.
And he's definitely not doing...
in trouble.
Yeah. It's definitely a problem. So yeah, Boyd goes on the rant. Sarah appears.
Yeah, so she's doing a terrible job of listening.
Right.
This whole episode, everything Boyd tells her, she does the exact opposite. Sarah. Like,
right.
I was upset last episode when she told Kenny the truth. Like, you should have kept your mouth shut. Just let Boyd handle this. But she continues to just act out and, like, make things so much worse at every corner for her and for Boyd and for the whole situation.
Right. So Tabitha basically says, hey, look, if you come near my kid, I am going to kill you. Say you understand. Sarah does so, and they end up leaving. Boyd tries to make his case again.
Yeah.
And Jim says, don't even.
Yeah, they're over Boyd.
Right.
They don't care about him or his leadership, and it's clear that, they're not happy about what's going on.
Boyd tells Sarah to lock the doors and to stay inside, which of course she's not going to do.
Yeah, well, he goes to tell Donna because he realizes, I need to make sure she's still on my side. Because if she isn't on my side, I'm in trouble, because she's like the other person with, some leadership in this town.
Right. Sarah says she's not strong enough for this, and Boyd says, I can't help you with that, so figure it out.
Yeah, she wants to die.
Right.
She's looking to him saying, please, just, like, they want to kill me, let them kill me.
Right.
I can't do this. And she's trying so hard to get somebody to kill her, this girl.
Yeah. So we cut to the Matthews house.
The Lou house.
The Lou house, right.
Yeah, where the Matthews are now staying.
Anymore. Ethan won't come out of his room. He knows about Sarah. They try to coach him out, and eventually Jim brings up the Chromonacle, which is a book they keep referencing within the series. Ethan eventually does come out and asks to see Sarah.
Yeah, he wants to see her. Which is funny, because just in the last scene, Tabitha was like, if you ever come near my kid again, I'm going to kill you, but now we're making plans to go visit Sarah.
Right. And yeah, that some people did make that comment. Yeah. We cut to Christy and Marie enjoying a romantic morning together.
Eating bread chips that Mrs. Lou made.
And it's kind of interesting, like, okay, they're in a state of undress. They're in their pajamas.
Yeah, they just woke up. I mean, they just spent their first night together in 6 months. So they're in no hurry to, like, go back to this world. They're just kind of living in their own little bubble at the moment.
The only thing I would say is that anybody could walk in there at any time with some kind of medical problem, and they're going to be dressed like that. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they probably should start using doors.
Right, yeah. Maybe lock the doors. Which they know that they did not do.
Right.
We figured that out later. Maria eventually reveals a shirt that Marie has been carrying around of Christie's that she's been carrying around since her disappearance.
Yeah, so I assume this is Christie's favorite shirt.
What was the shirt?
It's Gearhart Trucking.
Do you know what that is? It's like a band or something?
No. I took it as being advertising for a company.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it meant anything so far.
Okay. Christy asks Mary, what if she's not the same anymore? She's had to do some terrible things.
Yeah,
she said probably changed her.
She said, I've seen things, I've had to do things. I was curious. Does she mean like she's seen the monsters and a lot of dead bodies, or has she seen things?
Right.
The way that, Jade sees things, and Fatima told us a lot of people have seen things.
Yeah, I haven't seen any evidence of that within the series so far. Mary says that they will figure it out together, and they kiss. Sarah goes to her old house, sees her brother's jacket. It is soon discovered that the people from the bus are living there.
Yeah, so
they are instantly
a couple's taken
hostile.
over the house, which of course they have. The house is empty.
Right. You mentioned this last week. Why aren't people living in the house? Well, apparently people are.
People are. It was a couple. The woman was named in the captions as Paula, although her name wasn't spoken out loud, and the man didn't have a name. I didn't look in the credits to see their names, but...
This is a scene that I found clunky in execution. I liked the idea of it. I didn't find either of these two actors convincing. I thought they were pretty bad. But they're like, they instantly know who Sarah is.
Yeah, they knew her as that girl who killed her brother. Which makes sense that, like, that story would go around. They would have been told that's whose house you're moving into. Yeah, but they didn't really explain how they knew that's who she was
Right.
as quickly as they did.
I mean, unless a picture was circulated or something. But do they even have cameras to take pictures?
I don't know.
I know they did at one point because they had that picture of the man that
Well, yeah, in the
Jade
70s.
just saw, but yeah. So they're being very hostile to her, saying she needs to leave. Sarah is looking for something very specific.
Yeah, she said, I'm looking for something special, a small ceramic ornament. And they basically say, get the frick out of our house. Their big concern is that she's going to try moving back in. They want her out.
Right.
And she's like, I just want my stuff. But they already gave it to Mrs. Liu,
right.
who takes care of the storage. And when did they do that?
Yeah. I mean, they didn't have a whole lot of time. Like, everything
This would have been, they spent one night here.
Unless they did it, like, right away, as soon as they got into this house.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't seem like it would be my first priority.
Right.
Tabitha waited, like, a couple days before she did it.
Yeah, so the timeline is a little wonky here. Okay, so then we cut to Jade, who's arranging alcohol bottles.
He's got all the bottles, and they're all empty, by the way. Were they all empty, or did he empty them all? There's, like, 40 or 50 liquor bottles that are all empty.
Well, do you think he just straight up emptied them, or do you think he drank them all?
I don't know. That's a lot of empties.
I don't think... I know that I would not be able to survive that. Like, I would just be dead.
And he's arranging them on the floor, making the shape of the symbol. I'm not sure what he was hoping to get out of that exercise. And something that I noticed while doing this, it reminded me of the bottles that were hanging from the trees that Boyd and Sarah found.
Yeah.
And it made me wonder if there's some connection to
to
this bar and these bottles and somebody, something.
There might be. As far as Jade is concerned, this seems like busy work to me. I don't know what he's hoping to accomplish here.
He's like making the shape of the symbol any way he can, and right now it's taking the shape of a bunch of empty bottles.
I think it just symbolizes at this point Jade's complete obsession with this.
Yeah, this is all he can think about.
Victor comes in, which surprised me. I was actually wondering why Victor was just all of a sudden here with him. He's clearly here seeking out Jade.
Yeah.
He says, Jade doesn't look very good.
Maybe Tilly told him where to find him.
I guess so, maybe. I mean, Tilly's always good for that. Oh, I saw Jade going down by that bar down there. And
actually, the correct answer that we didn't get to see is probably Bacta told him.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
good point.
He would have been at Colony House with Bacta, and she had left Jade at the bar.
All right, and like I said, Bacta is not in this episode, along with Ellis still missing and Fatima not showing up in this episode. Victor says that he will tell Jade what he knows in exchange for playing the violin.
Well, he doesn't even tell him. Yeah, he was just like, I need you to do I need something for you. And
right.
Jade doesn't even want to hear it. He tells him to fuck off twice. And then he's like, okay, wait, what do you want?
There's a lot of fuck offs in this episode.
There were at least 6 in this scene.
Like, you counted?
F-bombs.
Yeah, okay, so...
And then, then Victor tells him, I want you to play the violin. And he's like, fine. And he's like, no, not here. Let's go for a walk. And, yeah, Jade threw at least 6 F-bombs at Victor.
Wow.
And just in this scene. And then there was a lot more later. It's so funny to watch the dynamics between the two of them.
Yeah, these are great. These are great characters.
Like I said, the episode description, it's just Jade and Victor, apologizing.
Mm-hmm.
He tells him to fuck off, apologizes. Victor cowers and then apologizes.
Right. It's a funny dynamic to watch.
And I hope I'm right about them being brothers.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
If you missed that, I had that theory in a past episode. I just see it. I can see them being siblings, and you know what?
They're almost acting like it.
I would love them for each other because they're both alone. They're both alone in the world.
It's very sad. We cut to Tabitha and Jim arguing over letting Ethan go see Sarah. Jim wants to do it, and he's citing therapy of doctors they once had, saying that sometimes they have to let Ethan lead. Do you know what they're talking about here?
Well,
as far as the therapy is concerned.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is sessions they had after Thomas died.
Okay.
And, trying to figure out how their child would deal with this.
Mm.
And there was probably some concern, I would imagine, about over babying Ethan.
Right.
Since the loss of their other child.
And it makes sense. But we don't know that actually for sure.
Yeah, I did find this whole mention of doctors a little weird. I was like, what are they talking about?
Right, okay.
Are they talking about the therapist? I mean, I concluded that must be what they're talking about. But it almost sounded like they're talking about, something we don't even know about.
Right.
So
I was wondering if we were talking about some kind of developmental issue that Ethan might have,
right,
in therapy sessions that we don't know about. But
right, and that's possible too. I mean, we've talked about how a lot of these characters might be on the spectrum, particularly the characters who see things,
right,
like the boy in white.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible that they are talking about something besides Thomas here, but yeah, I don't know. They didn't really give us a lot.
Yeah. So Jim wants to do it. Tabitha doesn't, and Jim is like, "Please let me do this."
Tabitha was like, "Let me come with you at least." Like
Right.
she wants to be there, and Jim is like, "You don't need to come." Like,
right.
Like I can handle this.
Tabitha isn't necessarily able to keep a cool head, whereas Jim is very much able to keep a cool head, which is one of the things I've appreciated about him this season, particularly when he was buried under the house.
And so Ethan comes out. Of course, he's listening, and he's again the wisest voice in town. Our little Ethan, and he tells his mom like, listen, on a quest, you have to face the scary things in order to take away their power. And he's basically telling his mom, I have to see her because that's the only way for me to not be afraid of her is if I face her.
And that makes total sense. And it's the smartest thing coming out of a 9-year-old.
And she's like, okay, just listen to your dad, stay with him.
And again, this is one of those scenes that made people think that the way to defeat the monsters was to not be afraid of them. Again, I don't buy it. I don't think that's what Ethan is saying here.
I think it's important. It's about facing your fears.
Right.
Not that being not afraid defeats them, but it's about having the courage to face your fears in order to defeat them.
Right, and that makes sense. We have a Donna and Boyd scene.
Again.
And I had talked about this last week. I didn't know what side Donna was going to fall under. And apparently it's not on the side of Boyd here.
Yeah, so they're in Donna's bedroom at Colony House. And how many times has Boyd gone to Donna in the last 24, 36 hours?
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
More so than you would think in the past, for sure.
Right. Like in the past, when we first had Boyd go see Donna, she was like, you're not supposed to be here. You got the impression they didn't communicate a lot.
Right.
Only when something big happened, which wasn't often. And here we go, like every 5 minutes he's going to see her and basically telling her nothing and acting crazy.
This is another scene where Boyd fails to sell anything here. You want Donna on your side, say something convincing. And he doesn't do that.
He doesn't do it. She reminds him that it's his rules that Sarah should be in the box. He told everyone he's going to come back with answers, but instead he came back with a psychopath. And Donna doesn't care that she hears voices. She says, we're still stuck here, and there's no yellow brick road leading home. I don't think Donna thinks there's a way out. She wants them to stop pretending there's a way out and just chill. Right.
Basically, Donna's whole thing since the beginning of the series is making a home for people, not for finding a way out of it.
Yeah, and she was kind of giving in to the whole, okay, let's see what happens. We knew she gave some resistance to the tower being built in the first place. She wasn't on board with him going to look for answers, and now she's like, we did all that. Are you happy? Can we just move on now and like get back to having our life and like let's fix all the mess we have here?
And she brings up a number of good points. I don't agree with everything she says in the scene, but she says, look, you're jeopardizing the one thing this place has going for it. They're people's faith in you.
Right.
And that's something I'm saying here. Like,
yeah, and it's clear. Everybody we've met has lost faith in Boyd at
if
this
you
time.
want to maintain credibility, you either have to make the case for Sarah being alive, and if you can't do that, you have to let her go in the box.
Yeah, and she made it clear just yesterday when they talked at the greenhouse, which was, I think, 2 episodes ago at this point, that she doesn't want to be a leader.
Right.
And if his leadership falls, they're going to look to her.
Right.
And she does not want that.
She brings up this thing about how she doesn't think him helping Sarah has anything to do with finding a way out, but it has everything to do with his guilt over his wife. I don't buy any of that. That's the only thing in the scene that I don't agree with her at all about.
She basically was saying, you couldn't save Abby, so now you want to save Sarah. But does she deserve to be saved? She's a killer.
Right. This is a similar thing that Father Cotty had said to Katri had said to Boyd at one point. There I understood, and it made sense. Here, not so much. I really think that Boyd's motivations are about trying to find a way out of the town, and not about his wife.
So she had made that Wizard of Oz reference, which was just notable to me. So in the original Oz book, Oz was a real place. But in the movie, The Wizard of Oz, which was made by MgM,
Mm.
The whole thing was a dream that Dorothy had after being hit in the head.
Oh, okay.
You know, the take in the movie is she imagined it all in her head.
Gotcha. And also, the title of this episode is Lullaby.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of fits into the same theme that we've had running through the season.
Yeah, that dream and a sleep overall overcompassing theme is definitely placed throughout this episode.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Boyd ends up asking, hey, look, are you going to support me or not? And Donna just kind of looks at him, and that's all that you need to know.
Yeah.
Like, Boyd, what have you given her to gain her support here?
And I take it as, I support you if you, go back to yourself and cut the shit. Donna, I don't support what you're doing right now.
Donna isn't the type that's just going to support you to support you. Donna's going to support you if she agrees with you. So, yeah, I don't think... Yeah, so I think, like I said, Boyd gives her absolutely nothing here. And she's like, well, have you talked to Mrs. Wu yet? And of course he hasn't.
Yeah.
And he starts to say, something, make up some excuse why that hasn't happened. And she just cuts him off and is like, well, maybe you should.
Right. Oh, and that reminds me, I didn't even have it in my notes, but earlier in this conversation, he mentioned Father Kotri. He was going to blame, Father Kotri's the one who kept Sarah alive. And she cut him off right away. Like, he's dead. You can't blame him.
Right.
This is all on you now.
Yeah. Everything that has happened is Boyd's decision. And I supported his decisions at the time. I still do. He's doing a lousy job selling it.
Right.
And
on that note, why are you hiding her in the church still?
Right.
You're making it clear that you're trying to hide her. If your stance is, she's my prisoner and I'm not going to kill her, go put her in the jail cell.
Right.
You have a cell with a door that locks. Lock her up. Say, I'm the sheriff. She's my prisoner. She's not going in the box.
Right.
I mean, take that stance publicly.
Yeah. For a leader, he's not doing a very good job of the politics of this situation, that's for sure. So we cut to Sarah, who's looking at the diner, and she sees Kenny exit. He's wearing... I like his outfit in this episode.
Yeah, he's wearing street clothes. I have mention of that in my notes somewhere. I think it's later when they actually interact. But he looks so much better not wearing those high water pants that he was wearing for his deputy uniform.
Yeah.
Yeah, he needs to stick to street clothes.
So Ethan and Jim end up finding her here. Ethan steps forward to say, only monsters live in the woods. He thought they were friends, but they aren't. She's a monster, and he isn't afraid of her. And Sarah quietly says, okay. Mm-hmm. She doesn't fight back. She just accepts this. Ethan steps back. We see Jim's face, which, we see a little bit of empathy there. But he just quietly leads Ethan away. We cut to Victor and Jade.
Yeah, Jade is very begrudgingly following Victor, still having no idea where they're going or why they're walking so far.
He makes a mention of the trees changing.
He says it's strange the trees are changing. I'm not sure what he meant by that. I saw discussions on this. People are saying, oh, it means the seasons are changing. I don't know if that's the case. I haven't seen any evidence. I think he meant more specifically, like, how he was talking about the trees moving earlier in the series.
Victor ends up leading Jade to a car graveyard, where Victor ended up moving all the cars after everybody in town died, basically.
Yeah, so when he was a child, back when that massacre happened, that we've only very briefly seen, he moved all the cars, and he said there's a lot more past those rocks, but those were already here. So we're getting lots of clues here, and all the people who said nothing happened in this episode really need to start paying more attention.
Well, I think some of these people aren't necessarily very good at discerning subtlety.
Yeah.
I think that's the deal. Like, a lot of the stuff that happens is very in the background, and you really have to, like, pick these details out yourself. The show doesn't always handhold you.
Yeah,
through these
and
things.
You know what? It's not an action series.
Right.
People are like, oh, we need more It's not an action series.
Right. It never has been.
It's a mystery drama. It's going to be focused on people, and it's got a sci-fi element and a horror element. It's a lot of things, but it's not an action series.
I rewatched season 1, and yeah, maybe there was a little bit more horror in the first season, But on the whole, it's not that much different from season 2.
No.
So I don't understand why people are complaining about it. Honestly,
Right.
I don't.
So by telling us that, there's other cars past the rocks and those were already here, it tells me he's not the first one to move cars. This has been happening a lot longer than he's been here.
Mm-hmm.
And we did get confirmation of that in this episode. It was kind of a question. People were wondering previously, like, well, some people thought maybe he's actually from this town when it used to be a real town, or maybe he was born here.
Mm-hmm.
We really got confirmation here
I was actually kind of convinced that Victor never came to this town, that he was this town. I said sound, I think. He never came to this town. He was just born here. This has been his home his entire life, even before we know he was here as a kid. I mean, that was my takeaway. Yeah. I was actually even wondering if, for a bit, and I don't think this is true, if maybe the events started with with everybody dying.
Right. And I think that this conversation in this episode kind of told us his mom and him did come here and they were hiding from the monsters every night. Mm-hmm. So the monsters pre-existed the massacre, because otherwise why were they hiding every night listening to screaming above? Mm-hmm. And I think the fact that the cars were already here tells us the cycle just keeps continuing. Mm-hmm. He's the one that's been here longest now, but I don't think that it's anything new, you know. And between the dates that we've seen and the whole Civil War soldiers, I'm pretty sure the events of this predate the buildings in the town also. Mm-hmm.
Probably.
It's like new buildings pop up or whatever every cycle, but what's happening has been happening for a really, really long time.
Which is something that we've basically theorized on before.
Yeah, but I think we got more evidence to that in this discussion.
Victor ends up apologizing for his anger the previous day. Mm-hmm. And he stops at a car and gives Jade the violin and climbs on top of the car. He wants to hear the Twinkling Star song. He climbs up on the car, which I think I just mentioned, and Jade realizes that it's his mother's car. And Jade is kind of quiet and befuddled in the scene, and then here he's empathetic towards Victor, the way he's played anyway.
Yeah.
When Victor was afraid, his mother would play the song. Jade begins to play, and we slowly zoom up to Victor, who cries hearing the song.
Yeah, he was listening very intently with his eyes closed until he started crying, and this was I was referring to earlier. It was a beautiful scene, and he. Like I said before, he doesn't even know the name Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. He's just like the Twinkling Star song. Do you know that one?
Right.
And I'm really glad Jade did.
Right. Yeah. And he was actually able to play it pretty proficiently, and that was a beautiful rendition of the song.
The whole thing was just gorgeous, right. And he did. He told us a lot of things, like how him and his mother would hide. And he talked about hearing people screaming while they were hiding. So it's very similar to how it was, when Boyd first came here. And they were all just hiding in these little cubby holes.
Elgin enters the church and finds Sarah. And he apologizes. Clearly not in the know. Doesn't know who Sarah is.
He doesn't know who she is, like the couple in her house did.
Right. They talk. And this is one of the few times in this episode that Sarah is shown any kind of kindness. We learn more about Elgin. Basically, he was every weekend going to his grandma's.
Yeah, he spent every weekend with his grandma. That's where he was going on the bus. Mm-hmm. And every Sunday, they went to church together. And then after church, she would crochet owls on the porch. Mm-hmm. Always owls. And that just incited the line to me. The owls are not what they seem.
Oh.
I don't know if you know that reference.
I do not.
That's a Twin Peaks thing.
Ah, gotcha. I've seen a few episodes of that series, but I never actually watched the series itself.
That's all I could think about when they were talking about owls.
Elgin was majorly macking on her.
Yeah, he was like, "Oh, you don't live at Colony House.
I would have
noticed you. So yeah, watch out, Julie."
Right. I don't know. The way this conversation ends, I don't think Julie has any competition.
Well, the way this conversation ends, but then later he's still helping her. So
yeah, but
he's taken by Julie. Yeah. Or by Sarah. By both of them.
Yeah. Got some competition.
But yeah, she says she lives here in the church.
Mm.
And he's like, I figured a priest would live here. And she's like, oh, well, there was one. There's a lot of that kind of undertone in this throughout this conversation where he's like,
Right.
oh.
Right.
Oh.
She ends up revealing that her and her brother used to go to a dollar store where they collected Christmas ornaments. He saved one.
And then they painted them together
Right.
and decorated them. So
Right.
this was something her and her brother did together, made them close.
She thought they were all gone, but he apparently still had one, and had one in this town.
Yeah. And that we've realized that's what she's been looking for.
Right.
This thing that just reminds her quintessentially of her brother that
Mhm.
she wants so bad.
Elton realizes that her brother is dead, and Sarah believes that the ornament that she's looking for is in the possession of Mrs. Wu, though she doesn't name Mrs. Wu.
Yeah, she says the person who has it, I don't think's gonna want to give it to me.
She asks if he feels it's true that if you are truly sorry for things, that God will forgive you. And Elgin says the exact wrong thing here, and says, no, I always thought that was wishful thinking. Eventually she reveals...
Yeah, he's like, what do you got to, what do you need forgiveness for?
Right, and he's kind of light about it. He doesn't think what he's going to hear is a big deal. And then she reveals that she killed her brother.
Yeah, that's all she says. She says, I killed my brother.
But, okay, so he asked the question... It was an accident, though, right?
Right.
And technically it was. But the other part of that is, I accidentally killed my brother while trying to kill a 9-year-old kid.
Yeah, after, butchering someone else and causing the death of 2 other people. We don't get into all that. But technically, yes, I did not kill my brother on purpose.
Right.
But she doesn't even say that. She's just like, she goes, you'll find out everything soon enough.
She kind of thinks that the kindness that she's being shown here is very, very temporary.
Yeah.
Like, once he knows the truth, he's not going to be as nice to her.
Right.
And that this little bond thing isn't going to mean anything.
But it's funny, because she doesn't defend herself at all. And he's like, yeah, okay, bye. Like, time for me to go.
So, alright. We have Ethan returning to the house, saying he isn't afraid anymore. And Jim says... Life lessons from the Chronicle, or however you pronounce that. Chronicle, which gives Tabitha an idea. We cut to Mrs. Wu at the diner, where she encounters Sarah.
Yeah, and I love this scene.
Mrs. Wu,
so beautiful.
You think she could express anger, she could be aggressive here. She's not.
Don't.
She just quietly expresses her heartbreak.
She says...
And what she lost.
I took care of you. You took him away from me. And you put hate inside me.
You know what? Anger would have been bad enough here. Disappointment and heartbreak is even worse.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, is Mrs. Liu is so loving. We've already heard she thought of Sarah as a daughter.
Right.
They were very close. They worked together. And to say, you put hate inside me, that sounds worse than... Yeah, you killed my husband, but you're making me feel hate. And I'm not a person that feels hate.
Right.
So this is bad. Like, this is so much worse than at the surface, yeah, you killed my husband, but the way you're making me feel right now,
right.
I don't know how to feel this way. And through all of it, she's still a caregiver and gives her stuff back.
Right.
And it was just so beautiful and touching, and I just want to give Mrs. Liu a hug.
Yeah, hats off to Elizabeth Moy here, who... was excellent in this scene, as was Avery Conrad, who plays Sarah. But yeah, this was an excellent scene. A quietly heartbreaking and sad scene.
And then, as Sarah's leaving, Mrs. Liu just goes in the back room. She takes her anger out by smashing some pans. And she doesn't do that. She takes pride in her restaurant, taking care of her belongings. And she just smashes that stuff to the ground, starts crying. And it's heartbreaking.
And Sarah hears every last bit of that.
You can see Sarah feels heartbroken and wants to comfort her, but she knows she can't because she's the reason she feels that way. And, I feel for Sarah, too, because this is all so hard for her. She didn't mean to be a villain. Right.
And she's really not, she doesn't have the constitution, the moral, the character to be a villain. The strength, I would say, to, deal with all this stuff.
So Sarah leaves with the box, only to find Kenny, and he's not as willing to be accommodating as his mother.
Yeah, Kenny gives the anger that you would almost expect from Mrs. Liu. He ends up dumping her stuff destroys the ornament.
Yeah. Well, I think the ornament would have been fine, except for the fact that she runs and picks it up.
That was a tactical error on that part.
Yeah.
If she had just ignored it and just like stood there, I don't think Kenny would have done anything.
He didn't know it was important to her until she runs and grabs it. And he's like, "Oh, what's that? That's important to you? Let me smash it."
Yeah.
And I don't blame him.
Right. This is, like on both sides you feel for these characters, and that's what I love about this show is there are no real villains in the show. We just have people. And I don't think, based on his expression when he's all done threatening her and all that I don't get the impression that Kenny is proud of his actions here.
No, I mean, this is very against Kenny's character. Kenny is very passive. Like, you don't feel like he would ever want to hurt anybody. He is just this kind, loving person, raised by Mrs. Lou.
Right.
Like, you have to imagine that he doesn't have it in him to even act like this. And his rage just over the last couple episodes is flipped his character so much.
I actually wanted to see more Kenny and his state of mind in this episode than we got.
He says, if you go near my mother again, I'm going to drag you into the box myself.
Now, it's notable, he's not wearing his sheriff uniform anymore, but he still has a gun.
Right, that's exactly what I have here. Note that Kenny turned in his badge, but he's still carrying that gun around. I think Boyd might be up for a fight for leadership of this community. I
mean, Kenny has shown no leadership ability whatsoever, but maybe being fueled by this anger, he will turn into some sort of leader.
We know that when it comes down to the actual community discussion on what's going to happen to Sarah, he's not going to be quiet.
Right. I don't imagine so. And Elgin, by the way, is in the background in this scene.
Yeah.
And he was just offering to be muscle for Sarah to, get her ornament back. He does absolutely nothing here.
No, but as soon as Kenny walks away, he does walk up and help Sarah start picking up her things.
He shows her empathy.
He shows that he's on her side, at least a little bit.
To a point.
Yeah.
He still doesn't, I don't think, know the entire story at this point.
Oh, no, he definitely doesn't know the story, but he's showing some compassion for her and for how terrible people are treating her. And he's willing to give her the benefit of the doubt that she's not just a murderer.
Right. It's interesting to me. I think that the way the town is treating her is almost worse than just going straight up into the box. I think this is almost more torturous and a more punishment.
Oh, for her, it definitely is. She wants them to just end it.
Right. She doesn't want to keep going. We cut to Mary, who is giving Christy a haircut.
Yeah, we're in Christy's bedroom again, and we have a very obvious shot of the clock. This time the clock is at 11:11. Second hand is not moving, but we keep getting different times.
Interesting. And in comes Dancing in the Rain lady, Tilly, who's finally found Christy. She's been looking for her for 3 episodes now. And she ends up giving her a bottle of liquid morphine.
Yeah, we got to see what's in her fanny pack. We've been waiting for Tilly's fanny pack to be open. It's liquid morphine.
Christy puts 2 and 2 together and realizes that she has a terminal illness.
Yeah.
And the reason for the morphine is when it gets bad, she will probably overdose on the morphine and kill herself, basically. That was my impression that I got from it.
Oh, I didn't take that. I just thought it was for...
I mean, I've seen stuff in the past where...
pain management. But...
It could be for pain management, but in some cases when some people have terminal illnesses that are going to get bad eventually, in order to not be a burden, they basically... inject themselves with a buttload of morphine and end up killing themselves. So maybe it's like that. Maybe it's just for pain management. She seems to think when it gets bad, she's not going to be able to do it. Now, is she asking Christy to help her with this?
I took it as she just wants Christy to hold her medicine and help her in dealing with her illness.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, that's how I took it.
There's another way to read the scene, though.
We found out she was diagnosed a month ago. So Mary sees her doing this.
Yes. There's another way to read this. We could read it at face value, which is my preference. But there are some people who think that Tilly is basically, this is her way of starting trouble.
Right.
That she's still this suspicious agent.
Yeah, a lot of people are really suspicious of Tilly. They think she's some kind of a plant and she's here to cause trouble and chaos. And one way she does this constantly is by telling people things that she knows that they don't know yet. So in this scene, she also casually mentions how Sarah's back. And this is news to Christy because, again, Christy was too busy playing house with Mary. She hasn't left the clinic yet. She hasn't even managed to put pants on still. So she doesn't know anything that's going on out on the streets about Sarah.
Right.
And, of course, she took this very bad when Tilly mentions this. I tend to think that it's all just a red herring. You know, they want us to be suspicious of Tilly, but I don't think we should be.
No.
I feel like she is just an old woman with an illness. And, you know, she's acting weird because she's told she's about to die. And she's dancing in the rain because she's trying to make the most out of her life that she has left.
I mean, I act weird too. And the reason is because I'm weird.
I also think perhaps she's being healed by being here.
Possibly.
I think that maybe, you know, as soon as they pulled up, any pain that she had went away. And, you know, maybe she doesn't need the morphine is why she's giving it to Christy. Maybe she feels all better. Maybe she's our John Locke. I know you didn't get far in Lost, but you probably got far enough to realize his deal.
Right, yeah.
You know, maybe people just get better here.
Maybe. So some of the things that Christy says in that conversation with Mary out on the street when she's trying to run towards
she put out her
town.
pants finally. She storms off. She wants to go to town, find out what's going on with Sarah. And Mary doesn't know what the heck is going on, but she stops her and says, "Who is Sarah?"
Yeah, and she says that she feels responsible because, you know, they had that conversation together where she basically gave her permission to do the bad things
and
that
Chrissy
she does.
says that specifically. Now, I've called it that, but here Chrissy specifically says, I gave her permission to go kill that little boy.
And she says she was so distracted by the idea of having Mary back that she didn't even really hear the question.
Right.
She wasn't really paying attention
and we know
to what was
that.
going
like,
on.
she was just kind of like, sure, you know, if there's something that could get us back to our loved ones, of course I'd do it. And she feels guilty not only for what Sarah did, but now she feels guilty that Mary's here. She's like, did I wish you here?
Right.
Like, it's my fault that you know, Sarah killed people and that you're here.
And that's a lot of guilt to take on.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of it's rational. I don't think she should feel that guilt, but feelings are very rarely rational, so this guilt makes sense. We cut to Jade and Victor, and he says that the man in the photo was named Christopher. He seemed really nice. He made people laugh, which was a very rare thing, but then he changed. And Jade ends up asking how. Yeah. But Victor doesn't want to say it anymore.
At this point, Victor's taken Jade to Christopher's car.
Right.
And Jade seems very interested in Christopher's car. But yeah, he says Jade shouldn't be asking these questions. And we get some more of Jade screaming and swearing.
And it's completely understandable. I understand Jade's frustration here. He's basically like, you know, tell me what you know. And Victor says, I can't tell you anymore. I don't know. Like, and then Jade's like, well, what do you know?
Yeah.
And I understand Jade's
and then apologizes again.
Right.
Like I said, they just keep apologizing to each other.
Like, I'm actually surprised that Victor sticks around and doesn't run off.
Yeah, Victor's trying here. You can tell he's really trying.
And he walks over to the car, and Jade walks over to him, and then quietly gives him empathy, apologizes, and says, look, I know it's scary, but this is driving me crazy. I need answers here.
And he tells him that Christopher changed after seeing that symbol. That symbol is what made him change, as far as Victor knows. And he didn't make people laugh anymore. One night, his mother told him to hide somewhere that Christopher didn't know about. And when he woke up the next morning, everyone was dead.
Are we to take that to believe that Christopher is responsible for these deaths?
Yeah, I can see three possibilities here. And I'm thinking maybe Victor doesn't even know. Like,
I mean, I'm
this
sure
is
he doesn't.
just Victor's assumptions. Here's what happened. My mom told me to hide where Christopher couldn't find me, and then they were dead. So, did Christopher actually turn into a monster? Is that what he meant by he changed? Did he physically turn into a monster and join the you know, that group of people? Or did he help the monsters, tell them where to find the people, similar to, you know, Sarah's help, the way she helped people?
Or maybe Christopher had nothing to do with this at all.
Or did he physically kill everybody?
Yeah.
Did the monsters not do this massacre? Did Christopher kill everybody the way Abby was doing before she got killed?
Right.
So there's a lot of different possibilities, but either way, Victor blames Christopher for the massacre. And it also got me questioning, like, we've seen that morning. Victor comes out of the root cellar.
Yeah.
How is being in the root cellar a place that Christopher didn't know about? That seemed like a pretty obvious hiding place.
Maybe it's a place that Christopher knew about, but not a place that he would suspect Victor was in.
And also, why wasn't his mom hiding with him? He said, go hide in a place Christopher can't find you, but why wasn't she with her son?
Right.
And I hope we get more about this. I want to see more about that massacre. I want to actually see these scenes play out at some point.
I'm sure we will eventually.
And I'm actually kind of wondering if they already filmed more of that. Because, you know, they had all the cars in the town for those shots. And now the cars are in this junkyard. I hope if we need to see that day again that they already filmed it. Because that sounds like a production nightmare.
Yeah, definitely.
Reset. So, you know, in the end, Victor, basically his conclusion is, there's bad things here. They make people do bad things. And he leaves Jade alone. Jade, you know, is left staring at Christopher's car. But you can tell that, you know, Victor's saying, like, it's bad that you're seeing those symbols.
Right.
The symbols are evil.
Right. I'm kind of
We
wondering...
had that discussion before about, oh, is it a good symbol or a bad symbol? It's a bad symbol, according to Victor.
I'm kind of wondering if whatever happened to Christopher is eventually going to happen to Jade.
Yeah, absolutely. That seems like what they're setting up here. Like, Jade is the new Christopher, and Ethan is the new Victor.
Except for the fact that Jade was never one to make people laugh.
Right.
He definitely isn't a person that's well liked, that's for sure.
Yeah. So
actually, we haven't even really seen Jade change that much, except actually he's kind of changing a little bit for the better, I think. Right. Honestly.
Right.
He's shown more compassion recently.
But I definitely think this is why Victor's been leery about talking to Jade about the symbol, is because he sees the symbol as the reason for bad things to happen.
Right. We end up cutting to Tabitha, who is in the woods, setting up a tower.
Yeah, so she's got those blocks that Mrs. Lou gave Ethan, and she's back at the cave exit where her and Victor had come out of in the pilot. Or not the pilot, the season premiere.
Season premiere. And she calls for the kids. Eventually, the kids end up showing up, and it's more than just the two of them.
It's not just the two. There's like, I didn't count them, like 6 or 8 kids.
It's even more than that, honestly.
A bunch of these ghastly children. And they were freaky.
Yeah,
okay?
They were.
They kind of came from, they didn't come from the cave.
No.
They came from the woods all around. And they kind of encircled her, and they were chanting.
And the closed captioning says that they were saying on gooey. Or on cooey.
On cooey. On cooey. They were just chanting it over and over again.
At first I thought they were calling her like Aunt Cooey or something like that. But that's... So I looked this word up. I didn't really get anything.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people coming up with a lot of different things, but they weren't the same word. So I haven't come to any real like direction I feel about this chant.
It's a possibility that closed captioning, what we saw there, was not the actual word.
Absolutely, because closed captioning is literally just people being paid to listen and type. And oftentimes they're not even people who watch the series. Like they'll get main characters' names wrong. So you can't go by that spelling and what they said as like the law here. I'd like to find the script, and I know these scripts were leaked somewhere.
Yeah.
I'd like to see what the script says they're saying.
Gotcha. If
that's the same word. And I didn't look into that because I'm afraid to go look near those scripts because I don't want to see the spoilers.
Right. So I heard a couple of explanations that sort of make sense. That Ankui, not necessarily that word, but a similar word, is like some kind of creature of death.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of theories people are floated around.
And I also saw that there was another word that was similar to a cry for attention or warning. These kids did not come off as particularly aggressive. I don't think they're trying to hurt Tabitha.
They're not trying to hurt, but they were sure being freaky.
Yeah.
So they encircled her
and lack social skills.
And started like coming down on her. And here's my question: could she physically feel them touching her, or was this just a visual, auditory hallucination?
Yeah.
Because they disappeared, right? And it looked like they're touching her, but I want to know, like, and I'm sure she'll end up telling her family about this experience because she has been actually opening up, like when Julie asks her. Is she going to say she could feel them? Like, were they there and then they disappeared? Or was it an audio-visual hallucination? And she just thought they were touching her because it looked like they were touching her.
As of now, I'm kind of assuming that actually was a physical event. We don't know that for sure, though.
And it also makes me wonder, the first, one of these kids that we saw was in the caves, locked up behind a gate.
Yeah.
Did the monsters capture one of them? Is that why there was one living in the caves?
Maybe.
Because these kids didn't come from the caves.
No.
They came from the woods.
Maybe that was a way of asking her to release that kid. Or something. I don't know. They were definitely trying to tell her something.
That would make sense, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, but they're definitely linked specifically to this toy in some way.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's definitely a lot of mystery there, but they're not the same as the monsters by any means.
I saw some people criticizing, hey, look, you called for them and then started freaking out when they showed up. Like, you were going to be like, no fear, but there was a lot more of them.
What she was doing, she was trying to just be as brave as her son was and face what scares her. She was just expecting these two little kids to come out of the tower and hold hands.
Not like a whole group of
That's
kids.
the only time she's ever seen them, is just standing there holding hands. I'm sure she wanted to try and have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
But then, they surrounded her and were being freaky.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't blame her.
No, I'm pretty sure that I would react the exact same way if I saw these, ghastly children, as they were described in Internet Movie Database, were coming at me trying to touch me. Like, I don't think I would react well to this at all.
Yeah.
I think there was a person on Facebook who referenced them as decomposing adolescents, which I like that phrasing. Okay, so Jade ends up finding Tabitha and sees her acting crazy, and he's like, oh, there's nobody here. And he's acting like she's crazy, but at the same time, he's also hallucinating things.
He didn't see anything, and he must have been on his way back from the junkyard. So this cave entrance can't be too far from there, or at least somewhere between there and town. And her nose is bleeding.
Yes.
During this scene, so that's interesting to know. She's having a physical reaction to whatever's happening.
Do you think the kids caused that nosebleed, or it just?
I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe the seasons are changing. That's what Victor was talking about.
Maybe it's similar to how both Ethan and Elgin had physical reactions to things that they saw. They had seizures.
Right. So this is a less extreme reaction to, like, an event like this.
Right. Her body's responding in some way to something.
We cut to Boyd, who sees Randall doing something with the bus.
He took seats out of the bus. That's all we saw in that little flash.
And he seems to have, like, a rope or something like that.
He's got a rope, and he's got the seats, and there was just a quick little flip of that, and then we got to see Jim comes up to Boyd. And
Boyd's like, look, I don't have time to get into this. And Jim says, hey, I'm not here to argue. I don't agree with what you did. But, He says he saw Sarah and didn't see a psychopath. He saw a broken kid. And he asked Boyd if he wonders if that was the whole point. And he starts to tell Boyd about the voice on the radio.
Yeah, so he's been told by Donna, keep this to yourself, but he confides in Boyd, tells him, finally,
right,
I heard somebody on the radio. I think and they not only knew who I was, they knew it was happening inside the basement of my house. So I think they're listening to us, and I think they're watching us.
And he says, look, I don't care if we like each other. We don't need to. But what we need to do is work together.
Yeah.
And then Boyd says, I have to go. This pissed me off so much. All right, so first of all, maybe we're getting a clue here why people don't talk to each other about the things they experience, because nobody wants to listen, for starters. And god damn it, Boyd. His performance in this episode is terrible.
But, Boyd's he's on this quest in his mind to get people on his side.
Well, here's an opportunity right here.
He left and he was like, I gotta go talk to Donna. And Donna tells him, you gotta go talk to Mrs. Lou. So now he's on his way to talk to Mrs. Lou. And I guess he's just not good at multitasking. Right. He's very, oriented on what he needs to do right now.
He could have finished this conversation off with, I would love to talk more about this.
In 2 hours.
Yeah, right. We'll talk more about this later. Right now, I gotta go talk to someone else, but we will talk about this, and we will talk about how we can work together.
Yeah.
Something politician-y and trying to get somebody on his side, which he needs.
Right, exactly.
He needs people on his side, and he's done nothing to do anything to get anybody on his side in this episode.
And Jim's whole thing about, we've got to start working together. This just reminded me again of the whole Lost mantra of
Mhm.
live together, die alone.
Mhm.
That was Jack's mantra on Lost throughout the entire series. You either live together or you go off on your own and you die. You
Right.
need each other to survive. And Jim has finally come around to that.
Nobody else seems to be. Including the person who's supposed to be leading the town in Boyd.
Yeah.
He's trying to get people on his side. Here's an opportunity to do that. He fails to do it. Boyd enters the diner and calls for Mrs. Wu.
Well,
and the way this...
First, we got to see a little bit more of what Randall's doing in the background. He actually, at this point, hoisted those seats up onto the top of the bus. We saw him physically using that rope as a pulley to get the seats up there. But yeah, then Boyd goes in the diner.
We hear a song play, which I have, by the way. I found
the jukebox played for the first time in a few episodes.
It's the song In Dreams by Roy Orbison.
Yep.
It was a 1963 song. I have more to say about that later. I have like this little blurb about how that song was used in another movie that I thought was interesting that I thought I would share.
Okay.
So I guess based on the lyrics, it's again fits into this dreams.
Right, it fits into this whole sleeping, motif. Dreaming, what's real, what's not, fantasy versus reality.
Right. And I kind of expected to see Mrs. Wu dead here. That's the vibe I got when she goes in.
He's here to tell Mrs. Wu about Sarah, but I mean, we know he's too late.
Right.
She's already had her piece with Sarah.
Well, I think he's still going to try to convince her why she shouldn't go into the box, regardless.
Right, absolutely. But his whole idea was let's get ahead of the...
Yeah, he's failed to do that in many ways.
Now, before we actually see Mrs. Liu, we see he's got the worms acting up again. As soon as the music started playing, the worms started wiggling around.
It's interesting that he doesn't seem to react as badly to it as he has in the
noticed.
past.
He picked up his arm, he's looking at them, and it's almost like they are activated by the music.
And then we have this little montage. Yeah. We cut to Christy putting on the shirt.
Christy puts that favorite shirt on.
The one that I'm sure smells really bad. I mean, I hope you watched it at least first.
But... Yeah, but Mary said, oh, it used to smell like you. Now it just smells.
Right.
I've taken it everywhere with me for 6 months.
And then we cut to Mary taking some liquid morphine.
So I was wrong about
we were both
Mary.
Wrong.
I took her at face value that she was literally just checking on the medicine. Nope. She has a new nickname, Morphine Mary.
And I was I said earlier that there was another way to read that Tilly scene, and that maybe this was a way to get Mary to take the drugs and perhaps self-destruct. Though, really, how long is she going to be able to do that for? There can't be that much morphine in the bottle that she can have maintain a steady habit.
Right. I mean, I was also wrong, I noticed in this scene. The thing on top of the medicine cabinet definitely is not a clock.
It's a weight?
It's something medical.
Gotcha.
It's not a clock. But it does still point at that, 12 o'clock position if we're talking about clock faces. So if it does come down to, where are their clocks in different positions, I still think it could count as a 12 o'clock location.
Okay. And then we cut to Jade throwing darts at the symbols.
Throwing darts
in
at the symbol, yeah.
We have Ethan building that tower again.
Yeah, he puts it back together on the porch. So, which means Tabitha was cognizant enough to carry it home.
Yeah.
She didn't leave it in the woods.
Unless Ethan has another set of blocks.
That would be weird.
Yeah, I guess.
And while he's doing that, Sarah walks past. She's just walking down the street, and she smiles at him.
Because she kind of forgets for a moment.
Yeah. And it was just, she had her look changed, and she looked so upset when she realized he's not smiling back.
Right. He's giving her the death glare.
It was just so sad, again, for both of them.
Because, Sarah is really fond of this kid that she tried to kill.
Yeah. And I think she's happy she didn't kill him.
Right. She's happy to see him, but then remembers, oh yeah, this person hates me now, and then walks more briskly. What is she even doing walking by this house?
She's just walking through town, having her little goodbye tour.
Yeah, I guess. And at this point, she's completely ostracized from the town officially. Yeah. She may not be going in the box, but she doesn't have any friends
The only
here.
person, other than Ellis, who doesn't really even know her story yet. The only person who's on her side is Boyd.
Right.
And what did she do? she did everything out of her way to do the exact opposite of everything he asked of her.
Right.
Like way to keep your supporter on your side
Right.
is to completely disobey everything he asked you to do.
He, Boyd did not do a great job in this episode by any means, but at the same time, Sarah definitely made what he was trying to do harder.
And that's what she's been doing this whole time.
Randall is chilling on top of the bus.
Yeah, so he's done putting the seat up there, and now he's sitting in those seats, and he's whittling something.
Right. And he also has a toolbox.
He does. It's a full-on, like, mechanics red, like, toolbox you'd see in a garage. And I was questioning, like, is that standard that would be on a bus? A whole toolbox like that?
I'm curious if he even got it from the bus in the first place.
Where else would he have got it
storage?
From? I mean, he hasn't been anywhere, has he?
Not that we've seen, but, we could have gone somewhere.
But yeah, he's got this whole, like, box, like a whole toolbox. Not not the kind you carry around, but like a shop's toolbox, just sitting on top of the bus.
Yes. And then we cut back to Boyd. Mrs. Wu comes out, and he quietly says, he gets a whip from her. This is not a happy look.
He knows at this point that she's already heard everything there is to hear.
And he says quietly, I was hoping that we could talk.
Yep.
And we're not going to see that conversation till the next episode.
Right.
And we actually need to see this conversation happen, I think.
Yeah, because she doesn't look like she's having it.
Right. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the episode. So, yeah, I got this little blurb off of Sound Facts about the In Dreams song that I thought was interesting. Doesn't really have anything to do with the episode itself, but I figured I'd share it anyway. Roy Orbison claims in interviews that the lyrics for this song came to him in a dream. He wrote the music once he woke up. Typical of many Orbison songs, it's a heartbreaker. Asleep at night is the only time he can be with the ones he loves, as when he wakes up, she's gone. The song is featured in a key scene in the 1986 film Blue Velvet, where Dean Stockwell, who we've talked about quite a few times in our Quantum Leap podcast, he basically lip-syncs the song. Orbison initially rejected director David Lynch's request to use the song.
David Lynch?
Yes, that was a David Lynch film.
Oh, okay.
But
I did mention Twin Peaks during this.
Oh, yes, that's right. He was responsible for that series as well. But later made a video for the track with scenes from the film. The use of this song in Blue Velvet sparked a career resurgence for Orbison. Because of legal entanglements, he didn't have access to the master recordings of many of his hits. So after the movie drummed up interest in his work, he set about re-recording his songs for a compilation called In Dreams, The Greatest Hits. When Orbison asked Lynch if he could use the footage of the film in the video for the re-recorded In Dreams, Lynch not only agreed, but offered to help with the song. With T-Bone Burnett producing, Lynch directed Orbison in his performance as he would an actor in a film, and it worked, allowing Orbison to be faithful to the original recording by doing it with no overdubs. And that's what I got for that.
Okay.
So, any other thoughts about this episode?
I think we set up so much here, and I'm eager to get to episode 6, not only because, we're told that's the big one, but it's like, where are we going with this?
Yes.
And where are we going after episode 6? That's the big one. But then what happens for the next 4 episodes after that?
A lot of this episode felt like table setting, which is why by itself it's not the most enjoyable watch, though there are great scenes that happen in this episode. The Victor and Jade stuff, the Mrs. Wu and Sarah stuff.
Yeah, Victor and Jade, amazing. And I'm going to keep saying it every chance I get that I want to see the 2 of them and Ethan. I want to see those 3 people team up, and I think they could actually get somewhere if those 3 could have a conversation.
Yeah, at this point, Victor has forgiven Jade, so why can't he also forgive Ethan for that?
At this point, I think it's mostly Ethan's parents aren't going to let him go off with these 2 men.
Right. I'm curious about a couple of things. Where are they going with the Sarah character?
Yeah, I don't think she's just going to end up dead in the box.
Right.
Maybe she's going to go off and come back later.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I do think she must be important.
Right.
If we're going to spend so much time questioning if she's important, she must be important.
Yeah, we actually have to do something with that.
Yeah.
And also, I'm kind of curious still, about Kenny and where he's at this point.
You know, Kenny was looking good in this episode. We got Morphine. Mary might be showing her true colors. Christy might give Kenny another chance.
Right. Yeah, maybe. It looks like Mary might flame out, go downhill, perhaps even die. I'm not necessarily rooting for that.
I mean, I was rooting for that the minute we met her. Sorry, but
yes.
I'm on Kenny's side.
Yes. Stacie has some bloodlust for Mary.
I want Kenny to have something good happen because I'm tired of saying poor Kenny.
Yes.
And I don't want it to be just from him turning and becoming vicious because of all of these experiences.
Yeah, that's not a direction I want to see Kenny go. And I'm just like I want to see more of what's going on with him mentally and where he's at, what he's doing. I'm curious, is he in the diner when Mrs. Wu comes out? Is he going to be involved in that scene with Boyd and Mrs. Wu?
Possibly.
Because that's going to be an ugly scene if he is.
Yeah.
But
yeah, what's going to go on with the direction of leadership in this town?
Right.
Are we going to even have a chance to get to that this season? Because shit's about to go down again.
Right.
Who's going to die in the next episode? People are definitely dying. I
think we definitely need a culling in this.
There's going to be named character deaths. I know that. The question is, are they going to be any of our main characters or just our side characters? Like, we just met a new couple that moved into Sarah's house. They are on the chopping block. One of them has a name.
Right.
Anytime you have a name, but you're not a main character, you're going to die eventually.
Yeah.
Like our Trudies. Which tells me Clara might be in trouble.
Right.
Again, this is that episode that has some ballet reference in the title.
Yes.
Which was how I remembered Clara's name in the first place.
Right.
I'm still worried about Mrs. Liu because of that Victor drawing in the truck, and I hope I'm wrong about that, but could she die in this one? Maybe. Maybe she has this whole dealing with confronting Sarah and Boyd, and then she dies.
I think a main person needs to die.
I see a lot of people thinking Ellis is in trouble. Because he's about to get married, and...
Oh, we can't have happiness in this town,
no,
that's for
we
sure.
can't have happiness. We do know from the, we've seen photos of the next episode, for the press photos were released, and we have a big group of people at the clinic, and we know from the episode description something happens at the clinic. That's our important location next episode.
I think Colony House is important, too. They mentioned the food shortage.
Yeah, we haven't seen Colony House in a while.
I mean, we were there in this episode.
We were there, but, like, just in Donna's bedroom. We haven't seen, like, here's our whole group of Colony House people. We didn't see how the bus people are settling in, other than, that whole fight with,
yeah, glimmers of Elgin being there.
What's his name? Randall. When Randall was taken out.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like, we haven't, like, experienced Colony House since, like, the light bulb incident, other than individual, like, oh, we're in Victor's room, oh, we're in this isolated scene, but we haven't seen like a big group scene there in a long time. Yeah, we didn't see Ellis and Fatima this episode.
I keep interchanging how I pronounce her name.
Yeah, we're more used to seeing that spelling as Fatima,
right?
But they always pronounce it Fatima. I don't know, but we saw it in the clinic. I know Fatima's there. Christy and Mary, Boyd, Kenny's there.
Ooh, that's going to be awkward.
It's going to be interesting how these characters ended up together in the clinic.
Right.
And I didn't see Ellis.
No.
So people think he's in trouble. And there's blood on most of their clothes in these pictures. So something has happened.
I'd imagine so, since they were hyping the episode up so much.
I mean, something has happened leading up to this group in the clinic, which may or may not be like the big thing that's happening. I don't know.
Right. Well,
I mean, they misled us this week by having all the pictures be about Randall on the bus.
Right.
And what is Randall doing up there?
Yeah, once again, this is the second episode in a row that did not play out the way I expected it to.
Yeah.
I expected it to be Boyd trying to convince the town not to put Sarah in the box.
And you said that last week as well.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, there were elements of that, but it didn't play out exactly quite the way I expected.
Yeah, there's still story to be had there. And when that happened, and it's like with this episode, like I was waiting the last 3 episodes for this scene with Jade and Victor at the junkyard because we saw that in promotional footage like at the beginning of the season. And 2 episodes ago we had Jade and Victor and the violin, which they have in that scene, and I was like, okay, this is when this happens. Nope. Next episode, okay, this is when it happens. So we finally got there. And, it's hard to decipher when things happen in the show because time progression's kind of wonky.
Yeah.
Everybody's always wearing the same outfits.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to track. And yeah, you're not necessarily things aren't gonna happen when we expect them to happen. But I know we're gonna get through it all eventually.
Yes.
And it's about having patience and paying attention to the little details, which some people are having such a hard time with.
I'm not always one for the little details, but that's why I have you to explain things.
Yeah,
to
and
me.
that's why we have to keep rewatching.
Yes.
I feel like after every episode, it's time to go back and watch every single episode again.
Yeah,
for context based on what we just learned.
For this podcast, I think I end up watching 3 or 4 times. I do my initial watch through, and then I end up watching it again, and then I do a watch through just for the notes, and then yeah.
Yeah, a couple scenes like the scene with Elgin and Sarah in the church. Like, I rewound that a few times because the first time I watched it, I was like, wait a minute, did she just know his name and he never said his name?
Right.
Because when they were introducing each other, he didn't say his name. But
right.
in the context of his story about his grandma, he mentioned his name.
Right.
He was speaking as his grandma, like, Elgin, blah, 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 blah. And that's how she knew his name.
Yeah, it's funny because...
And I was like, I gotta watch that again. I gotta watch. It's like, there's a famous Lost... meme where Locke says we got to watch that again because they had just found a video and they had to keep rewatching it. And that's how I feel about like everything in this series. You got to watch it again.
There was a meme that was shared in the group specifically making fun of Elgin, who was macking on like Sarah and saying, "Oh, hey, want me to be your muscle?" And then him in the background not doing anything when Kenny attacks her. So I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah, so I actually watched this episode one of the times with the closed captioning because I wanted to see what the girls were saying.
Yeah.
And then...
I always watch all television with captions turned on.
I don't always, and that's how I was actually able to capture some of the lyrics, like in that when the song started playing, which is why I was able to get the song. I usually rely on you for the music. Yeah. But in this case, I was able to.
Speaking of the music, I said last week I did make a YouTube playlist with all the songs from this show. So that playlist has been updated to add a violin recording of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and In Dreams.
Nice.
Yeah, so that is all up to date.
I'm curious, was it the rendition that we found in this episode with Twinkle Twinkle Little Star? Was it a violin playing?
I found a violin of it. I mean,
okay.
not
the exact one, obviously, but...
Yeah, not David Alpay playing.
Gotcha. If it even was David Alpay playing.
Yes, he actually is a violinist.
Oh, okay.
I've seen people talking about how he's played violin in other shows that he's done. His characters have been violinists. So that is a trait of that actor. Then he's a great violinist.
Okay.
And it makes me wonder, did they write that into the character because of that? Or did they cast him because they wanted somebody who plays the violin?
Right. It's funny because I think the guy who plays Jade, David Alpay, as we were just talking about, he's the guy whose work I'm gonna seek out more, along with the guy who plays Jim. His name was what again?
Put me on the spot.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I
knew you knew
Ian Bailey.
Ewan Bailey. Okay, I'm kind of curious because he plays Jim in such a low key fashion that I'm kind of curious if that's how he plays like all his characters.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I'm familiar with him is Once Upon a Time. And
gotcha.
Again, I had totally failed to recognize him until someone pointed it out to me. I'm not great with faces.
Gotcha.
Or names, to be honest.
I mean, they do a really good job.
I'm one of those people that I watch something and I'm like, who is that? I know them from something. IMDb.
Right. I mean, I do the same, but I also happen to usually recognize actors a little bit better.
I'll recognize people, but I'll have no idea why I recognize them. And then I'll be like, oh, they're a main star in something I watched for like 6 years.
Right.
Why did I not know why I recognized them?
Right. All right, so do we have any other thoughts about this week's episode?
I think we well covered it, and I look forward to our next discussion. It should be a good one.
It should be really exciting. We would love to hear from you. Stacie can be reached at...
I can be reached on Twitter at TVN Coupon Talk.
Reach out to us and tell us what you think of the podcast or this episode. If you have any theories, we'll certainly share them. We shout people out who discuss things with us. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join my Core Productions Facebook page. You can buy a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as ourselves. You can buy something from the Corn Production store on Zazzle. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Corn Productions, signing off.